right, I think we are live. Morgan, I don't think I can hear you yet, though. Let me see. But you can hear me, right? Okay, maybe leaving and coming back. I don't know. We've got help if you need to do that.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, can hear you now. Yay.
Okay, sorry. I knew
Perfect.
my speaker was on the wrong setting.
No, that's
All
okay.
right.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you so much. So good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, depending on where you are. This is Start the Week Without Spencer. Uh, but we have Morgan Doman here. Morgan is, of course, Spencer's sister. She's also a staff member. She's also a life coach. Um, has a lot of great insight because she also grew up on the program, as did I. I am Colleen Hudson. I'm Director of Representatives. And I'd say that the Doman Method has been pretty much our whole lives. So I know that we're trying to go live on Instagram right now, but I believe we are live on Facebook and YouTube. So as tradition dictates, in this session, generally we'll start with the topic of interest, but we also are asking families to submit questions. Any questions you have at all about the Doman Method, about maybe your child's diagnosis, any of that kind of thing. But today we're going to be talking a little about, I think, a part of the program that we mention frequently, but I thought it would be pretty fun to go into some depth about what we mean when we say that the Doman Method empowers parents. Um, so, Morgan, do you want to share anything about yourself before we start?
Um, well, I mean, I love this topic. Yeah, as Colleen did a great job introducing me, so I don't have much more to add except I just, I think so many parents who have children with special needs just feel so disempowered after they go through their child's diagnosis, the trauma of that. They feel like everything's out of control and there's not much they can do. And they have to kind of hand their child over to professionals. And I think that that is the furthest from the truth. And, you know, the Doman method really works when parents feel empowered that this is their job. And I think it's also because I think instinctually parents know that their children are their responsibility and they want to have the power to do something about it. And so it feels better, it feels good to have the power, which means the tools, but also just knowing like I'm in charge. And I think that a lot of parents really struggle with that. So I'm excited to get into more detail about it because I want all of you listening to know like you're not alone in this. A lot of parents feel this way as well. It's a common thing that we see. It's very common.
Yeah, I agree with that. So I thought first we'd talk about what exactly does that mean to be empowered as a parent, because we, of course, we're international. So in different parts of the world, it might look like something different. In the United States, we tend to be very independent type people. So I think it's natural for American parents to crave a degree of self-sufficiency in parenting, but at the same time, when you become a parent, you are looking for other people's insight because it's all so new and so tough. And even if your child is a little older and you're starting to realize there's a problem, then suddenly you're cast. Maybe you thought you had it all together, and now
Mm-hmm.
there's this time of complete uncertainty, and having to go to, as you said, like, go to experts, give yourself over to that, and maybe not be feeling as in agreement,
Mm-hmm.
but not knowing whether you have the right to not be in agreement. So yeah, what does empowerment really mean for parents, do you think?
For me, and this is what I think, I see a lot in my work is one, having the tools, but maybe even more importantly, understanding what's going on. I think so many parents, when your child especially is diagnosed with a syndrome, there's like a bunch of symptoms attached to it, but no one can tell you why, why your child is acting in a certain way or why they're not doing something. And so I think for parents, having a really good understanding of what is actually happening in your child's brain, in your child's body, is so empowering. Because once you understand the why, then you can go, okay, what are we going to do about it? It's a very common question, especially for parents who come for their first, second appointments. They're like, my child's doing this. Why? And it's, as a staff member, it's so exciting to be able to go, it's because the injury is in this area of the brain, and so this is the symptom. And then parents go, oh, got it. And then we can get to doing the what much better. So I think empowerment really comes from the why first. We don't believe in holding anything back in terms of the why. We want you to understand your child's brain better than anyone. Oh, great. We're live on Instagram now. Hi, everyone.
Everyone on Instagram. Hi.
So Colleen and I were talking about, what does actually being empowered mean? And I was saying, the why, understanding the why, and then understanding how, what to do about it. And for every child, for every family, that looks different. But that's why we give the tools, to parents. There's no gatekeeping here. We want parents to have the tools so that they can go home and do it as much as possible. Mm-hmm. And then I think the third is parents really believing. I mean, we say this all the time, but I think parents really struggle to really believe this, which is, your child better than anyone. And, I have moms all the time go, something will be going on with their kid and they'll be like, well, I think it's this. And I'm like, you're their mother, so we're going to go with that. And they're always like a little bit like, really? Are you sure? And, usually I'm in agreement, but it's still, their gut is usually right, and so mothers and dads know best. And, but they know even more when they know the why behind everything. So it's so cool to be able to empower them so that they can truly live out that whole, idea of they know what's best for their kid. So I think what about for you, Colleen? Do you have anything to add?
I love all those points. I think you're absolutely right. And yeah, so for everyone's joining us on Instagram now, Spencer is not with us this week. He'll be back next week. He's been seeing families in Serbia and the Balkans, which is one of the regions where we travel. But Morgan and I are here today to talk about how the Doman Method empowers parents. And we were starting with a definition of empowerment because it's important to know, I think, what you're going for when you're when you're honing in on a philosophical point. It's practical, very practical, but also it's a lot about your approach and your viewpoint. So I think that everything you said, I completely agree. I think also that for parents who in our, especially in the modern era, it's really, we have so much information, right? But not as much knowledge as we could use. And I think that parents will sometimes inadvertently separate themselves from their gut instinct, their that knowledge of their child. So by really giving parents the key to that again and the permission to feel that way, like, I think it's this. You're like, yeah, I think you're right. It can be, that is empowering because you start, then it becomes this feedback where you start thinking, oh, okay, I've got this instinct. Maybe I'm actually right about this. Maybe I need to sit with this a little more. Maybe I need to observe my kid more. You're with them more than anyone else, and you've known them since the moment really since before, but since the moment they were born. So there's no reason that you wouldn't be the expert in your child. That, I think that is the key, though, for the Doman Method. A lot of people call us up, and over 70 years have done this for years and years, and saying, how can I, learn to teach other people's kids or do this with other people's kids? And look, the concepts that are out there, of course, you can read our books if you're an educator or anything and apply some things that are universal, which are great and super helpful. And your kids, who are in your cohort would enjoy themselves. But the fact is that the Doman method really rests on that parent, or like family dynamic, the parent kid, that connection and building on that. So I think that's the other part of becoming an empowered parent is that you say, you might wear the white coat, you might have all of the diplomas on the wall. That's great. I'm not saying it's not. You might even be a parent yourself and have a lot of good insight in that way. But for my kid, I'm really going to need to take everything that you say and run it through my knowledge of my own child. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So when a family comes for, and really it starts with the books. I think the
Mhm.
message of the books is you can do this.
Mhm.
We're teaching you. I tell parents in every call that I have, we are not interested in creating lifelong clients. we really want to graduate kids and parents from our program, as soon as possible, as soon as practical. So it doesn't mean we're shuffling people off in a hurry, but as you said, we don't hold anything back.
Mhm.
We want to just build your expertise on your own kids so that you really feel comfortable making choices for them especially as they get older and develop. When families come to an appointment, how do we continue that? Or really, I guess for some families it really is just the start, even though maybe they've read the books, they've watched our lectures. But how do you feel about, like, let's say you're working with a family who's been through a lot of medical stuff
Mhm.
for many years or been to different therapies and things like that. How do you approach that with them as far as, yeah, we're different?
Well, I think for me, the first thing is always the evaluation. When our child comes in for their first eval, it's really a important moment for everyone because we finally get a very good idea of where this child is actually at and what the child's main priorities are. Because the medical world loves to, section off children, the speech problem, then you got the cognitive problem, then you got the physical issues, and everything is very separate. But with Doman, when we do an evaluation, one person does the entire eval. So we look at every single area of your child's life. Um, and so when we do that, we get a really good look at a child, their family, because every family also has their own capacity due to many different factors. And so we look at that and we go, okay, here are our actual priorities. And for example, for a child who's walking in the door who can't speak, for example, can't read, can't move, we have different priorities than the rest of the world. The rest of the world is saying, "Oh, let's get a few, um, few words of speech. Let's see if we can get this kid sitting up, for example." But we're going back even further, and we're going, "Is this child healthy? Like, what do we have to do to get this child really healthy?" Is feeding an issue? Is what's going on with the child's sleeping and things like that? Just like the foundations of life, because if those things are interrupted, like nothing else is going to work. And then we can sit down with parents and really go, what are your priorities? Because as staff members, we look at a child, and of course we have priorities, but it's our goal that we can always marry the priorities of the parents and our expertise, right? We explain why we think we have to do this before that, and then parents go, oh, okay. Because sometimes we have a family coming in, the parents go, oh, our dream is that our child can just start walking. And it's like, we love that too, but the first goal is we have to get this kid crawling. So we always have to, we have your long-term vision, but we'll tell you what is something that we can actually do in the next 6 months. And so we love to marry those two together. And I think it's a really, important part of our program is that we say, hey, what's parents' priority? And by doing that, we can empower parents to go, okay, these are your priorities, and here's what you're going to do about it. So then, of course, we follow it up with all our programs. And it's just really cool for parents to be able to go home and go, okay, we have something to do. We can actually do something about this. We're not the victims here anymore. We're empowered to do this for our child, no matter where your child is on their healing journey. And I also think it's really great because, and I think this is especially true for parents that find Doman International, but there's always this thing in the back of their head, which is, there's no way that I can't help my child. Because a lot of times parents will get very grim diagnoses, things that are very upsetting to hear. My child will never speak, they'll never walk. And the parents are like, okay, but what can we do to at least try? And a lot of the medical world doesn't have a lot to offer except for, PT, OT, and a lot of that stuff doesn't really help a lot of kids. So it's really great, I think, for parents to also just have an answer to what can we do though? We get your grim diagnoses, but like, what can we actually do? And I think that alone for so many parents, just it's such a relief. And it's one of my favorite things about our program is getting to see parents. I think a lot of them leave the office feeling a lot taller and a lot more, excited for the future rather than like depressed about it.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I have the privilege of course, talking to the majority of parents with their first first contact with us. And I often hear from families after they've started their program, after they've come for their first appointment. And that is overwhelmingly the emotion. They leave feeling taller, they leave feeling validated in a lot of cases, because many times they've been, it's an interesting thing. And I think this is going way, way back. Glenn used to address it, the phenomenon of parents whose child has, major challenges going to the medical professionals, or the conventional professionals, I should say. I don't want to lay it all at the feet of medicine, but the people they've been told, this is who you got to go see. Your kid is not right. They're not right. Let's go, get the answers, and being given very grim prognoses. And I know Glenn used to say, the parents who would find the Doman method, and I think this is still true, are the ones who say, that's not good. And like, I'm not just going to lay down and take it. I'm not just, because parents will say, well, all right, so what do we do? And they say, well, there really isn't too much you can do. Of course you can do these therapies. Parents are great, we'll try those, and then really smart parents will say, well, how do those usually work out? Right? Like, what's the success rate? And they say, well, but it's what you do. And so the parents who are, of course, every parent's going to say, all right, it's what we do. We got to do it. But in the meantime, they're thinking, yeah, but I also got to find the thing that's actually going to be effective. And again, that isn't, I can't tell you how many parents I talk to who say, the day that we got our diagnosis and our list of, recommended therapies, when I saw that these therapies typically only happened once a week, that was when I thought, no, I got to find something different. And I think that's so smart because, of course, every parent knows just from living with your kid, no change happens doing something once a week. Nobody would ever learn to eat or potty train or any of these.
Like laughable.
It's insanity.
You imagine trying to teach a child to toilet train by just like putting them on the toilet once a week. Like it would take 10 years.
They'd be 45. Yeah. So I think that's when parents really start to say, this is not the way. It's a way, but it's not my way. I got to go find my way. So when parents come for their appointment, then is that really that initial feeling of, oh, these people hear me. Yes, they have a tremendous amount of experience and they have information to share with me. they're going to give me guidance, a clear plan. But at the same time, if something is not sitting right with my gut, they're going to listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that all by itself is so valuable. Um, for parents whose kids are getting older and who, maybe they've been on the program a little while, they're seeing improvements. I'm thinking about the parents who like we're getting ready to graduate to life.
Mm-hmm.
Those kids, like once they've been doing this for a while, at that point, how do we give parents the tools that they need to continue being? I mean, they're growing into it the whole time, but so that
Mm-hmm.
they really feel once they're not seeing us regularly, that they can go out into the world, maybe even relatives, or close friends are questioning some of the stuff that they've done. But I feel like our parents have a little bit of armor. How do we do that? How do we?
Well, I mean, I think they always know that we're here, that just because they're not in constant contact or, their child is ready for, a regular life, not doing the Doman method anymore. It doesn't mean we're not here for them. And things do come up, by the way, for kids, especially kids who graduate very young on the program. Sometimes their injury will reemerge, just slight little things later on that the parents want to talk to us about. But I think it's really hard to mess with anyone who's saved a child's life. It's just really difficult because okay, what are you going to say, to knock me over? And I think that for parents who truly embody that, like we did this, because actually I have met some mothers who don't, who get their kids well, and all of a sudden they don't embody it. They don't see the amazing things they did. And that can be really, hard for them. But it always comes back to this, I did this and you can try and take it away from me, because people will say things like, oh, it was going to happen anyway. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous, and I think what people, I think what parents really love is just that feeling of like, look, you can tell me what, but I've done this and I know it works and I've seen it work, and look at where my kid's at. And I think that's all that parents really care about, is that their kid is okay. And so, yeah, it's just really hard to knock them over. I love having them in the Doman Parent Support Group because they're so strong, and the moms are like, whoa, and they'll come in, by the way, they're the hardest on other mothers. They'll be like, you need to do that. They're like, hardcore, because they've just seen the results, and they're very intense in like a very good way. And yeah, I just think it's hard to knock them over. It's really, really hard. And it's a beautiful thing though, because they go off and then they do other great things. That's the other thing. They all have these incredible missions. Sometimes they join staff, but a lot of times they're just like going off and just living their own dream now, because doing a new business or something like that just makes them feel amazing.
Yeah, I hear you. I think because we teach families how to build a strong foundation, we identify the gaps through our evaluations, and then we teach them every aspect of how everything fits together. That, yeah, you're right. Like they have built a strong foundation for their child neurologically, and now they've also built a strong foundation for themselves to be able to weather any kind of
and so something I hear from a lot of mothers too is how much it's helped them and their neurology. Like they're stronger, they focus better, they're healthier. I know one mom, she goes, yeah, I didn't realize I was brain injured until I started doing creeping and crawling with my son. And all of a sudden, like, I was like, oh, wow, I'm seeing a lot better. I'm a lot calmer. I'm more focused, So it's definitely an incredible thing. I think it improves everyone in the family, because that's what we really want. We really want to empower the whole family to be able to, and this is why I always say to parents, make sure to tell your children how far they have come. because sometimes kids do this program so young, they actually don't remember it as an adult, or they just kind of like remember a little bit, but they don't remember like a lot of it. They also don't remember how hurt they were.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's really important actually to not just but to tell the kids you've come so far.
Yeah.
Because then they know, oh, I have come so far, and that empowers them. That makes them feel good and all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. It's not about dwelling on what was
No,
or
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
yeah, but it is where every single one of us is important to our society.
Mm-hmm.
It's interesting for me as I get older, I realize that more and more. And every child really counts. We need them, and we need parents, and we need everybody to be, to feel strong and that they're contributing in their way. And so I think as for parents to bring it's our mission as parents to make our kids independent, to get them to that point where they can launch. And if you've got a kid with significant challenges, that job is so much harder. But if you can accomplish it, then you've done something pretty amazing for the whole human race.
Absolutely.
Really. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty huge. I think we get sometimes for myself too, like we just get so focused on the minutia, the stuff that's in front of us, because it's like, oh, we got to do the thing, that you forget how every single action ripples out and makes a difference. It's one of the best things about the job I'm doing now is that after 70 years of the Doman Method being in existence, I talked to so many families who were aware of the work before they had a kid with a problem, which is really cool. Because that definitely didn't used to be the case, So it's very exciting to know that now that the word is slowly but surely really getting out, that more and more people are connected, and we are all connected.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And talking about connection, like this is why we started the Doman Parent Support Group. So while parents are on the program, they can feel connected to other parents. We have conversations about the program, but also just, how's everyone feeling today? We have one of my favorite things to do is just an open Q&A, and we talk about social issues. We talk about, advocacy for your children, and it's so cool for mothers, I think, especially because I think moms tend to feel very isolated, to just know, oh, there's like other mothers going through this, and like we can all have a nice conversation. And I also love, I have moms from every different religion, every different background, speaking multiple different languages, and all they care about is their kids. It's like, it's really, I feel like, heals a lot of divides, because it's like, we don't care. We just want to know how we can help our kids.
Exactly. Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, and it's so important for mothers to just know they're not alone.
Yeah, that's right. Well, so I think we've covered a lot about empowerment, but I want, as it comes up more, it's such a huge thing. If you feel that you can do it, and then your kids can do it, and then it just, again, it ripples out, and we all start to feel like we can do that. We've got this together. It's fantastic.
Absolutely.
I'd love to move to some questions. We've got some questions coming in. We've got Virginia. Hi, Virginia. We see Virginia a lot, which is fantastic. So Virginia's asking, she said, you find you're so empowered in terms of what to do, but lacking items or the money to buy diet, to buy the food for the diet. And then I see that you've mentioned too, adding like good schools and things like that. So it is a really hard thing when you know what you could do if you had the resources, and you don't. I will say though, Virginia, this is truly a universal thing. I talk to a lot of families who say, well, I know things are so much better in the US, or so much better in England, or so much better. But the truth is they're just different. And we do work with families for whom, luckily, resources are not an issue, but we work with a lot more families who are, always thinking about that bottom line because they have to, and making tough choices sometimes too about, where the funds are going to go. So, yeah, I guess, Morgan, where would, if when a family has like really really limited financial resources, what do we recommend for them to do in terms of focusing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think about two things, and just to take that word focus, I think one of the reasons why so many parents struggle financially or with resources in general is because they are being pulled a million different ways. All those therapies have copays, and so it's not free, and so it's important, I think, to get very clear about what are we going to do right now. What is our family going to focus on? And that may mean, kids not going to a bunch of, little lessons throughout the week, because those can start to add up as well. No, sometimes it is a priority for them to do that. And so I understand every family is different, but I think the first thing you have to do is sit down. Both parents, this can't be done by one, or, everyone involved in the finances needs to be there. And we need to say, what's the focus here? Where are we going to put our money? That the money that we can afford to put towards this. And that may, like you're saying, involve some sacrifice. I think of a mom, Darcy Hawkshurst, who has spoken with us many times before. She is a single mother. Her daughter is now graduated from the program and doing fabulous. She's in her 30s, graduated from college, just super amazing. But Darcy was on food stamps. She wanted to be home with her kid. She wanted to do this program. And so she sacrificed. She was on food stamps. She got assistance from the government. She went to every person she knew and said, I need money. I got to save my kid. I need money. And she didn't care. Like, I'm sure it was hard for her, but, I've talked to her, in retrospect about it. And for her, it was just a matter of, this is the most important thing. And I really do think so many parents do not rely on their communities enough. Get plugged in to a church, any kind of religious organization. They should be able to help you to get locked in with your community. Send out emails to your community. Hey, I need help. $5, $10, so that everyone knows that you are in need and that this is how they can help you. And you would be surprised, by the way, how quickly things start to add up. A lot of our parents are fundraise. A lot of our parents get sponsors from their local churches, local community groups, to come to our program. Sometimes full, but sometimes just partial. It's just enough, to get it over the edge, so to speak. So you have to become resourceful, and it's not fair, it's not, but it's the fact of the matter, right? Especially if you need help with the diet and things like that. I can't say for everywhere in the world, but it's starting to get to a point where food is so expensive here in the US. Healthy food is actually not that much more expensive than unhealthy food, funny enough. And so, well, I don't know if it's funny, but it kind of is the way that it is. I literally saw someone do a comparison. She was at Walmart and she got 5 days of meals for a family of 4, and the healthy cart with all the organic stuff was only like $20 more. So, we're not looking at extremes anymore. Unfortunately, and that's a whole other topic, but it's not fair. And if it was up to me, every single, family on this program would have a lot of money to do whatever they wanted to do, but it's just not the case. The other thing is, it really depends on where you are in the world, but there are areas of the world that do help financially.
Virginia is in Kenya.
In Kenya. Okay, so I'm not sure. You can always try reaching out to your local government to see what's going on if they have extra money. But yeah, I know it's not fair, and so I kind of hate talking about this kind of thing, but it's true.
Yeah, it's definitely hard.
Yeah.
I think the if we're looking at, like supplements versus healthy food, that kind of thing, like, oh, I can't afford to buy a bunch of supplements, but I can, get the best quality food possible. That's a good thing. Like, that's a really important step in the right direction.
I would also say if you really read the books and study them, we do have parents who do programs from them. It's incredible. But not everything in there requires you to pay money for stuff. There are things that are free. So definitely read those books carefully and go, okay, these are the things we can do. Get started there. Yeah.
Sometimes private organizations too. I know we mentioned government, but every country is so different. Sometimes even a local church, or I will like not sponsor a family for a lot of money, but perhaps sponsor for a better quality food for my disabled child, something like that, where you're not asking for a ton, but it's something that the congregation could maybe get together on, particularly if you happen to be their denomination, I guess. But it's really hard because every community is so different. And a lot of
Also,
communities aren't communities either.
something I like to recommend too is sometimes it's better, instead of ask yourself, who in my community, who do I know, just like personally, friend, family member, who will go out and help me with this? Because sometimes also just having a friend do this with you or a family member can really help. And also some people, it's their zone of genius. We all know someone who like can walk into a room and within like 10 minutes they've said hi to everyone. They know everyone's life story, and they, it's really incredible. So also think about, who do I know in my life who I could talk to one-on-one? Because sometimes it's also easier to get people to help you when you talk to them one-on-one.
That's true. And not necessarily to say, hey, could you please help me financially? But I need your expert, assuming like that. No, I'm not going to ask you for help financially because I don't know what your life is, and that's fair. But what I need is somebody with that kind of mindset. Like there's a different kind of communication style, different mindset. You never know who they know. So maybe they say, oh my gosh, my church has been looking for a service project, or the youth of my church have been looking for a service project. Maybe they could come and pattern, little things like that. So I think sometimes when we go looking also for a specific need, we end up accidentally limiting ourselves because we think, well, I know what I need. What I need is I need $25 to buy these supplements. That's what I need. $25 for supplements. The end. And it can be, and then you find out someone says, well, I don't have $25. I can't help you. And then suddenly the conversation stops. But where you instead you say, look, my disabled child needs, I just need some volunteer support. I just need some help here. I just, or I just need some thoughts. We're trying to do this program and here are our limitations. We're running, when you give people a problem to solve too, sometimes you end up with better results than if you go to them saying, what I need is $25 for supplements. And they say, I don't have $25. And then the end, as opposed to, hey, do you have any clever ideas? Because I'm really stuck. And yeah. But I agree with you. I think going to friends and family who might be, again, they don't have the $25, but they might have really good ideas. And eventually it could lead to, maybe a different kind of help, but something that is just as useful. And then the more people get involved too in the story, in what you're trying to do in a beneficial way, it ripples out again. So I think that's the best advice we can give at the moment. And that's for everybody, not just you, Virginia, but everybody everywhere. When we limit ourselves to one thing, that we get like the no answer. But Virginia also asked about Luca Varon, and she said, "Can parents try?" So I know nothing about this at all. I don't know if, Morgan, you've read any more about it or if you have any insight. It's the kind of thing that,
Yes, I actually asked Spencer for his statement on
okay,
this.
okay.
Uh, so, leucovorin is essentially fulonic acid. Okay. And we've been actually giving some kids with autism fulonic acid in one way or another for 10, 15 years. Okay. Some children have difficulty absorbing it, which can be benefited from it, so they can benefit from the supplement. However, some children don't see any benefits from it. Best for parents to contact their DI nutritionist directly and ask about it, or ask about it at their next visit. Okay. Yeah. This is a big topic in the US right now. And so I asked Spencer because I knew this question was going to come.
And I think it's really,
so we've been talking about this for 10, 15 years. It's just part of our protocols. And, and I think it's also one of the things that I think is so hard about, sorry, Colleen, I'm going on a tangent for a second.
Go.
Is so hard about the world of special needs is that we're way ahead of mainstream, like way ahead. Things that people are talking about now, we're like, there's only a few things that maybe we're not, but mostly everything, like Spencer said, we've been doing this for 10, 15 years now. So, it's, for us, stuff like this, we're like, whatever, and so I think this is also why I'm so proud to work for this organization, is that, we really are on the cutting edge. And so, yeah, anyway, Colleen, it's all yours.
Yeah. So Virginia, for you, for the leucovorin, so what Spencer actually sent a message in about it, because Morgan had asked him about it, because it is a big topic right now. We do have familiarity with it. In some cases, it's been helpful for some children, but it's very individual. So we don't recommend it as a blanket thing. And it would really require lab tests and things like that to determine if it was something that could be beneficial. And even if it were, it wouldn't be a magic pill. I think one of the issues that we have, certainly in the United States, and I don't know about other countries, but I presume so, because we're all human and humans are gonna human. We really would love to be able to say, wow, here's something that's universal. It'll work for everybody. This will be great. I think in every circumstance, we just would love to have something that would be universally beneficial, and we could say this would be great for every kid. But the truth is that we are all so individual, and what works well for one person, what's healthy for them, what's good for them, is not necessarily going to be good and healthy for the person sitting next to them. Sometimes even a sibling. So that can be very, very frustrating, because it does give these kinds of there are no absolutes. And of course the news cycle does really loves to say, oh, they found a great thing that so and so. And if President Trump is talking about leucovorin and he has people in his orbit who are telling him about it, lovely. But the fact is, as Spencer said, it's something that we've known about for 10 or 15 years, and in our experience, it's just not a universal thing in any way. It's something that I've what was it? Shoot, I can't remember now. But there was another treatment that came up not too long ago that I had a couple parents all at once asking me about, and it's because it had been proliferating on on social media, and it was the same thing. And Spencer said, we try, yes, we have tried that, and yes, it has been some benefit to some kids, but from the Doman Method perspective, and I think this is really important for families to hear again and again, because you're going to keep on getting all of these things from outside. There's nothing wrong with asking, hey, have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? And we'll tell you immediately. Mm-hmm. But with 70 years of experience, if we don't see a big, pretty much universal benefit to the kids we work with, we're not going to endorse it. And it doesn't mean that you can't try it. And it doesn't mean that we might not say, oh, maybe your kid would be benefited by it. That's great. Because again, your kid's an individual and we know that and we see that. But, but you're never going to catch the Doman Method staff saying, oh yeah, we finally found the miracle cure, because we haven't yet. So.
It's also the big problem with trying to cure or treat anything that's a syndrome. Because again, you're just trying to treat the symptoms. And because people in the mainstream still look at autism as not necessarily a neurological issue with a injury in a particular part of the brain, it's very hard because every kid is different, like, Colleen is saying. And also we have a lot of children who are originally diagnosed with autism who later get genetic testing because genetic testing has become so popular lately. And that also can influence what a child needs in terms of, different supplements and stuff like that. So it's complicated. And that's one of the reasons why, we do, after you have an evaluation with Doman, if I don't know if you all know this, but the team sits down to create your program because your child's so individual. We have to consider every area of their life. And so we create your child's program all together. So, you have literally hundreds of years of experience when you talk about our senior staff and you put all their years of experience together. And so, to say there's just going to be one thing that solves everything, it's very rare. And usually when that's the case, the child had a very, very minor injury in the first place or was very sick. Sometimes kids are like super ill and, their heavy metals are off the charts or something, and that could be a game changer. But usually a child requires people to look at your child from a holistic point of view and deal with all the areas. So yeah, it's so important. that's why like our functional diagnosis is so powerful, for parents to be able to understand like where the injury actually is and why that's causing symptoms.
Actually, that goes along with our theme today, because when you have, so our diagnosis that we, after our evaluation that we give to each kid based on what their evaluation showed us it's a functional neurological diagnosis. It's very precise. We really get, detailed about it. And I think that does empower parents, because rather than walking out of the office with a label that may or may not fit their kid. I mean, I can't tell you how many parents I've talked to who said, well, we don't really have a diagnosis because we did this testing and they said, well, maybe he's on the autism spectrum, but he makes great eye contact, so he can't possibly be autistic. And I'm like, okay. Yeah. And then they said, well, and then, he has this other issue that's kind of consistent with this. And I'm like, that's why these labels are just completely insufficient, and they don't take into account the individual nature of your child's injury.
Yeah.
So,
and then of course, then they're like, oh, then they tack on 5 labels to your child, for no reason. And then you go, okay, now that my child has all these labels, what do we do about it? And they're like, OT, PT, it's the same thing. You're like, oh.
Well, it's like the, when your child has a diagnosis, and I mean, we're not laughing because it's fun. It's unfortunate. It's like you can't help but laugh because it's so ludicrous that parents are still being given these kinds of labels and expected to make sense out of it. And the parents but again, smart parents are like, no, my kid is my kid. Like, they've got all of these different issues, and you want to lump them under one umbrella. And maybe for insurance purposes, especially here in the US with the codes and all that, you have to lump them under one umbrella. Okay, fair. But that doesn't, my kid is not an autistic kid. My kid is not a kid, a cerebral palsy kid. They're Timmy or they're Jordan. Like, they're not. So, and they need their own individualized approach, as everybody does. The whole the old thing we would say, like, oh, a kid gets a diagnosis that they're dyslexic, which means they can't read, or profoundly dyslexic, which means they really can't read.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, tell me something I didn't know,
Yeah, yeah,
parents, yeah,
yeah.
I
I
think
think
for,
it's for parents to recognize that, even if it's great if you come to us and your kid has not had a diagnosis yet. That's great. Because then nobody has any preconceived notions, which is wonderful. We will never have any preconceived notions based on that diagnosis, but obviously we understand that your family and friends might, and that can be harder for you.
yeah,
But when kids have had a diagnosis, we're really not interested in what what you've been told. Oh, this means this means that. Like, no, every kid has infinite potential. We have to just find the keys to unlock it. We have to get them there step by step. So no diagnosis is the final word.
yeah,
That's I think that's important, and for empowering parents to know that it doesn't matter if they told you a child with this diagnosis will never walk, will never talk, will never read. Like, okay, fine, but my kid is not a child with that diagnosis.
yes. Yeah. And if I could say one more thing about empowering your kids,
Yeah.
I think that, there's a trend that I see a lot I work with, I'm a cognitive staff member, so I see a lot of kids with reading issues and hyperactivity, children who can walk but aren't doing well in school. Like, that's kind of can be it a lot. And what I see is that a lot of kids, especially in that category, are just drugged to be good in
Mm.
school. Like, a lot of them are actually read very well sometimes, but they can't sit still. And so parents are told to drug them. And so for me, one of the things that's so important is that we empower kids to not have to take drugs to sit in class, but to actually heal their injury to the brain so that so they can just like be in school like any kid, you know? And I think that for parents in that boat, it can be heartbreaking, because your child doesn't have that much time left. And so, if you have a child in that boat, don't wait. Talk to Colleen
Yeah.
today, because we can do so much to help your child be able to handle class. There's some great holistic things out there and within the Doman method that allows us to, get that child off those medications so that they can live, a wonderful life, side effect free,
Yeah.
and also be able to enjoy school. So, yeah, reach out to Colleen, because I think my heart breaks for those kids even more than
Mm-hmm.
anything, just because, yeah, they're being told to be quiet and stop moving.
Right. Yeah, they're being told that something's wrong with them,
Yeah,
and these drugs that are dulling them are the
yeah,
answer. That's not the answer. Now, being you know being completely wacky because you can't control your sensory issues, that's not fair to them either. So that's not what we're
yeah,
talking about. But we're saying that we can help them to to address those challenges in a holistic way so that they can go into school drug free, but with better attention span, just like the
yeah,
other kids.
yeah.
And that's really our goal always. So yeah, I agree with you, Morgan. Like, letting the kids know it's not your fault. It's okay. We just got
Yeah,
to get the right answer for you.
absolutely, absolutely.
So I'm going to give my contact information for families who are watching who we haven't, if we haven't been in touch yet. We do, our books are available, of course. I'd love to hop on a call with you to answer your questions. We do appointments throughout the year. We're currently scheduling for December. And then we also have our first quarter schedule available too. So my number is country code 1-814-232-8668. And my email address is info at domaninternational.org. You can also always send us a direct message through any of our social media platforms because I see all of those. And just, let us know that you were watching the live today. But thank you so much for joining us. Morgan, thank you so much for talking to us today. It's always great to have you here. Your
It's
insight is spectacular. So
It's a pleasure to be with you, Colleen, for an hour. Thank you so, so much.
you're so welcome. All right. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you next week. Spencer will be back. Yes, great. Oh, thank you, Les. That's my number. I have WhatsApp on that number, so please message me, or you can call too. That's fine. All right. But thanks, everyone. We'll see you again right here next week. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you so much, everyone.